If you drive out Shady Grove Road towards the Montgomery County Air Park, on your left will be a farm known as the Pope Farm. Today, it is the nursery for the Montgomery County Department of Parks. Before that, the Pope family called it home. Russell and Minnie Pope still live there. They retained 2 acres when they sold the land to the county. Before that, it was a working farm. Russell's father, Carson, came to this area from West Virginia. He and his wife, Amy, purchased this land in 1910 to raise beef and hogs. Back then, farming was pretty rough.
Well, we didn't have the equipment naturally back then. There's those days that we have nowadays. And most everything was done by hand. You cut wood by hand. We did have a rig rigged up that we sawed wood for stove wood through the winter. But other than that, most everything else was done by hand.
According to Minnie, Russell's mother had a lot of hard work too.
I'm sure she had to keep her mind on family at all times. Even when she had them tucked in bed, she had to anticipate what was going to be for breakfast and what time they had to get up, and to get them all do their chores. They had chores in the morning pertaining to the animals, because animals always have to be cared for just like people. And so your thoughts are never far from them.
Russell remembers his chores very well.
Generally helping feed the hogs and chores around like that when I was a youngster. Later on we got into the heavier work like hauling in corn, and the men would shuck during the day and we'd haul in after we got home from school. Hitch the horses up to the wagon and go out in the field and gather the corn up and load it on the wagon and bring it in. Next morning before school, generally we forked it off into the granary to have the wagon ready for the next evening. And clean out stables and water the stock and so forth.
In all, there were 6 children in Russell's family, Russell being the only boy. As the family grew, Carson Pope expanded their home.
Well, I was born in a house that originally was a log house, and later on some folks built, before we got it, built a frame adjacent to or connected to the log house, and I was born in that. Well, 4 of us children were, the other 2 were born in the new house. And in around 1921, my dad decided he wanted to build a new house, so he drew up plans for the house and tore the log part down and moved the frame part from his position over the foundation and cellar basement, so he could build his new house over that area. And the mantle behind us come from out of the frame part of that house, which I venture to say is 200 years old, because we've owned it 90-some years.
Russell and Minnie were married in 1943. They moved into the farm's tenant house and began a life together. Not being a farm girl, Minnie had to adjust.
What certainly was very confining. You had to stay home and do things the hard way sometimes. But it's gratifying. And the children, raising children under those circumstances is maybe easier. They know they're worth something and they have something to do and contribute to the overall benefit of the family. And of course I had to learn to do a lot of things I knew nothing about, but I guess every young bride has to do that. So,
despite that, Minnie is convinced that her life was much easier than that of Russell's mother.
when his mother lived, they had to put the milk and all in a spring house, what they called a spring house, and as well as the ice house, which they had to cut ice and put in. And So having the convenience of refrigerators and freezers, of course, the freezer was a big thing, helped with the preservation of food. Before that, you had to can everything, and that's a hot, heavy job. So the freezer was manna from heaven when it first came in, for meat as well as vegetables. So at least you had plenty to eat.
In 1947, Russell took over the farm, 1 year after his father passed away. Originally, however, Russell wanted to be a mechanic, but changed his mind during the war.
I was drafted in the Second World War and was ready to go, and the draft board decided I'd be more good at home. So I was deferred, had occupational deferment. And I kind of felt a little obligated to, since boys I knew went over there and never come back.
Russell and Minnie raised 2 sons. They were always involved in farming activities. In fact, running a farm was really a family responsibility.
Back in those days, when we thrashed and made hay, we hired extra men, and we always gave them the noontime meal. And I'd bring in 5, 6 men sometimes extra for her to feed, and she didn't bring that in the situation, and she also helped out on the farm some, drove tractor some for loading hay and that sort of stuff. So,
But no more than I could help. I tried not for him not to get dependent on me.
Being a farmer means becoming a jack of all trades. It's not just about growing things.
well, you wouldn't hardly realize you were, I guess you'd say, a bookkeeper, a manager, a mechanic, and a veterinarian. And I think that's where my son got the veterinarian idea, was to help give the cattle shots for pneumonia and that sort of things that they would catch. And just had to be an all-around guy, and they still do. Most farmers have to do their own mechanical work.
The Popes farmed their land until 1968. That's when they found themselves having to sell it to the county.
Well, that has a story to it too. Some speculators bought the land west of the farm and decided they wanted to put an airport in there. So in doing so, they wanted us to donate 12 or 14 acres of land, which is in the flight pattern, which we didn't feel like we were obligated to donate the land to the county. Didn't offer to buy it. So we went to court, and in the ensuing court wrangle, they decided to put it in park taken. Well, we were left hanging then. No recourse but to deal with them or take it to court and let the court decide what the land was worth, which I always felt wasn't a fair deal. That if anybody had to give up land for public, whether it be road or whatever, they should be paid at least market price or maybe a little bonus. But it didn't happen. So that was the reason we sold it.
Today, the Popes occasionally visit their original farm site. While somewhat bitter over how it ended, they don't regret a minute of their life there.
Well, it's a growing experience. You certainly learn to do and make do with a lot of things you never thought you would be able to do, you know. And you find you don't have to run to the store and get things. You really can make them or find something else to fill in and get along on your own, which people this day have all they do is run to the store quick and get whatever little thing they need. But it makes you tough. So, because you do have a lot of physical activities, and your body does respond by getting tougher to survive, you have to get tough.